The Supreme Court temporarily halted the Trump administration's deportation of Venezuelans held in Texas. While this marks a short-term setback to the Trump administration's effort to deport Venezuelan criminals, the Supreme Court indicated that it would provide a future order on the matter. But the question is a confrontation coming between the court and the Trump administration as they keep weighing in on these deportations? Here to discuss this and more, Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett, who serves on 3 House committees, including the Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman Burchett, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Tony. I'm driving down the road. I'm speaking to a group of Cub Scouts here in a minute. So I'm actually riding down the road, I should say, not driving.
Yeah, make sure you clarify that. We want to set a good example. All right, so what do you think about the Supreme Court's order halting the deportations of these Venezuelans held in Texas?
I don't think a lot of it, Tony. I worry about the constitutional rights of Americans that have their family members been raped or murdered. We have a young man here in Knoxville, Tennessee. I saw his mom and dad today, as a matter of fact. He was killed by an illegal. And I keep wondering, what about those people's constitutional rights? Of course, I'm not an attorney, and I get all of it, but I'm worried about the overall thing. And I think it also reemphasizes elections have consequences. President Obama, President Clinton, and Bush, between the 3 of them, they sent over 6 million people out of this country, literally evicted them, illegals, and yet they stacked our courts with some of the most liberal judges that we've ever seen. And as conservatives, we have a nice heart. We want to do well by people, and then yet we continue to play ball with these liberals, and we put moderates on our courts. And this is what we're suffering from. I feel like I really do.
So this was, if not the major issue, it was at the top of the list of issues in the last election, securing the southern border. But also, judicial activism remains a big issue for voters, especially conservative voters. I mean, it's like all of those things and national security all kind of rolled into one in this particular case. It appears that the Trump administration, for instance, they've been told by the court to return this man from Maryland who was sent down to El Salvador, and they're saying, hey, we can't. Hey, we asked for him, he's not coming back. This appears to be like it's going to be a bigger deal than what it looks on the surface. Could we be looking at a major confrontation between the administration and the court?
I think we will. But I mean, if the shoe was on the other foot, imagine if the president of El Salvador said to America, send back an American that you have in prison. I mean, that's exactly what they're doing. This guy he's from El Salvador. He's here illegally. It's under 2 different judges, and we've had an informant saying he's MS-13. We have investigations into this. The president believes he's MS-13. His people believe him to be MS-13. Yet we have the Democrats who, for some reason, think this is a beach to die on. I keep saying, are they polling on, in prisons that are full of gang members? Because this obviously is not I don't even think it's an 80-20 issue. I think it's a 95-5. I think America's sick of it. And CNN even, they had a poll out that shows that 55% of the population, CNN, so you can stack 10 more percentage points on that easily. CNN said that America thinks that Trump is in the right direction on immigration. He's basically shut the border down, which is something Biden refused to do. He refused to let our border agents enforce the law. And I think America's sick of it. And I think America is ready for a fight.
What options do the Trump administration have if the court does not change course on this?
Of course, direct defiance. Darrell Issa has a bill. I would like to see that bear some fruit. I'd like to see what that does in the Senate. Put it up for a vote. Let's see what happens, because it basically instructs the courts to stay in their own lane. Now, dealing with the Supreme Court, that's a different assumption. I'm not the legal expert, but I suspect. I don't know who ultimately has the power there. And I don't want to abuse, and I see the idealistic viewpoint of some of my friends, but the reality is it we've been denied our constitutional rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness because they've allowed illegal people with criminal backgrounds and criminal tendencies into this country that want to do ill will to Americans.
And I think, as you just laid that out, that's an 80-20 issue. Certainly among conservatives, that they do not want people here illegally committing crimes against American citizens. But I want to ask you this question: how you process this from a standpoint of, you mentioned, and we're talking Supreme Court now because it's Supreme Court on Saturday night, as Samuel Alito said, in the middle of the night issued this order. But this is a quote unquote conservative leaning court that President Trump constructed in his last administration. So how do you balance that? That this is a court that for the most part has gotten it right, and they're saying, wait, you can't do this. How do you process that?
I know I have a hard time processing it because I see my libertarian friends. I see their viewpoint, but I also see the mothers that I've talked to that have lost loved ones, their children to illegals, and they've been denied that constitutional right. So I don't know where the balance is. I just think it's so far out of whack that we've, and we've seen in the past, Nixon, I think it was a burger court. He thought that he'd put a conservative there, and it turned out he wasn't. So I don't know. I guess I'd have to pray on it, but I would fall back on the safety of Americans.
Well, and as you and I have talked multiple times before, these problems that we have now that are so big, we didn't get there overnight, and we've created huge problems that we have to deal with. Tim, we're almost up against the break. Got less than a minute left, and I don't want to hold you from your Cub Scouts, but I think we still got some time to squeeze in a couple more questions. I'm going to hold you over to the next segment, but I want to ask you about the second round of talks that took place between the U.S. and Iran. I mean, this is you're on the Foreign Affairs Committee. You've got your finger on the pulse internationally of what's happening. We've got 30 seconds left, and we'll come back and finish this. But your initial thoughts, reactions to this weekend's talks.
I'm glad Donald Trump's in the White House. I'm glad he's the one doing the negotiations. Under Joe Biden or a moderate Republican, I'm sure we'd write a strong letter and do nothing. Iran having nuclear weapons is not healthy for America. It's not healthy for our friends, specifically Israel. So I think President Trump is doing what he's doing, and he's negotiating from strength.
All right. We'll finish that conversation at the other side of the break. Congressman, thanks for sticking around and working us in before the Cub Scouts. All right. I want to talk, continue these conversations about Iran. As we said, the second round of conversations took place this past weekend. Iran's foreign minister says progress was made on, quote, principles and objectives, but details have been scarce. What specifics do we know?
Well, our objectives are what President Trump outlined when he ran for office, which is kind of unusual for somebody running for president to keep their word, but dadgum he is. He said he wanted peace in the Middle East, and he realizes that sometimes the only thing these people understand is force, and that's what Iran understands, and that's why from what I understand, our bombers are stationed close there, and if things were to devolve in the wrong direction, that would take care of business, and I don't think Trump wants that. Trump wants a peaceful solution, but he's not going to go over there with America's checkbook and buy them out like it's been done in the past, because then the next leader just asks for $1 more. It's kind of you don't pay terrorists, and that's exactly what would happen. But Trump understands the force, and he understands the fact that they want to destroy Israel, and Israel is our friend. And I don't believe President Trump will turn his back on them, and I think he's going to stick to his word. And I think we'll end up with peace, whether Iran is a pile of sand or they're a thriving nation. But I think you've got somebody in the White House that understands how to negotiate, for goodness sakes. I mean, he's dealt with those unions in New York for years, and for better or for worse, he understands it, and he understands negotiating, and that is from power, and he knows we've got the power.
Well, the two nations will meet again next Saturday. And let me say, are you concerned that the Iranian mullahs are running out the clock? I mean, how long before they get a delay of game? Because, I mean, how long, again, you're on the Foreign Affairs Committee, you track these things, how long before, they've run out the clock and they're at that point of having the nuclear capabilities and the capability of delivering it.
Well, of course, that is ultimately some of their goals, is to do that, to run it out until they have the nuclear capabilities. And I think Trump realizes that, and I think that's why our bombers are stationed where they are right now. And I think President Trump is not afraid to use them if need be to protect us and our friends' freedom. And so I think ultimately they have to weigh that. But you got to realize too, just like in Gaza, the leaders probably aren't there. They're somewhere safe, somewhere in Qatar or somewhere else. Some of them are anyway, pulling the strings and letting old men make decisions and young men die. And I think Trump realizes that as well. So he's cognizant of the fact that civilians could lose their life, but he's also cognizant of the fact that we have friends in the Middle East. And I'm sure he's weighing that, and that weighs heavy on his decision.
You're absolutely right. I mean, he's been very clear about that. He wants peace. He doesn't want war. He doesn't want to be known as a war president. You mentioned Israel. The Jerusalem Post suggests that Israelis are not confident that the deal will necessarily benefit them. I mean, you have to consider, I mean, they've gotten the short end of the stick multiple times. What do you think is causing their concern?
I think that's they need to say that because they need to look like they're maybe not on the fence, but they're not getting in the middle of it. And I think also that fact that leaves them a little room to fall back on. I think it's purely a PR move. And because if they were to come out and endorse anything Trump did, I think that would show Iran's weakness to Israel, and their leaders know they can't show that. So I think that's all part of a political move. That's my theory.
Congressman, I mean, there's so much happening on the global stage. Let's move to Russia and Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin announced a one-day Easter ceasefire, but it reportedly was violated multiple times. That situation there looked like it may be moving toward a ceasefire, but now, I mean, what do we guess is going to play out there?
I just don't think you could ever trust Putin. He's a thug, but again, it's not our war. If we were truly concerned about people's lives, we'd be going to war with China because they're one of the biggest violators right now on the world stage. They did the Uyghurs and others. So I think it's clearly right now it's in their court. If they truly want peace, then they'll move towards that agenda. But if not, they're going to keep going like they're going, and you're going to see America, I feel like, pull further and further back from that conflict. We're already $250 billion in the middle of it. The president of Ukraine has already stated, Zelensky stated he doesn't know where, I think it was 100 billion of those dollars went. So there's a lot of questions that need to remain to be asked, but I just don't feel like that's our war, Tony, and I don't feel like we need to invest any more of our great-grandchildren's finances in that war.
The outcome of that could affect us, though, could it not?
It could, but the outcome everywhere else could too. But I think the thing we've got to realize, they realize we have a strong leader in Donald Trump, and I don't think that they're going to make any moves towards us. But you got to realize too, Russia's GDP is somewhere between France and Canada's. They're not the axis of evil or whatever from years gone past. They are greatly diminished in power, even if they were to slice off a part of Ukraine, which I suspect was in the works. I feel like that needs to be, and Ukraine won't play ball with us either, though. We give them all that money, and yet they won't give us access to their rare earth minerals, and that's something that I think we could both benefit from, and that would show some strength. And I believe Russia would not want to interject any military.
Tim, we're gonna have to leave it there, Tim.